Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Accelerator with Michael Conniff. That's me. We're a podcast devoted to startups, entrepreneurs, and founders, also to the money people who usually say no to them, but are very interested in them. We're happy to have them on board. And I'm going to add a category today that I don't always mention at the top of the telecast. You'll see why. It's incubators and accelerators. And I want to remind everybody this is the companion podcast to The Angel. We're available via Substack subscription, which is the best way, also on all the major platforms, including Spotify and YouTube for audio and video. And with that, having been said, I want to welcome to the podcast Fred Schonenberg. He is the head honcho, main man at VentureFuel, which I think I can accurately call an incubator. Is that right, Fred?
You know what? It's a little bit more consultancy, innovation, advisory. We do some acceleration. In a lot of ways, people think of us as like a 2.0 of the accelerator model, where we take some of the best parts of accelerators, but we remove a lot of the bias that's in there. So some of the equity pieces that go in. So I kind of think of ourselves as like a professional accelerator.
Okay, so that's a great place to start. So if 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 you had to describe Accelerator 1.0 and then 2.0, what's Accelerator 1.0, and also what are some of the weaknesses in that model, and then how does Accelerator 2.0, which is VentureFuel, address that?
Yeah, I mean, the accelerator, people call things accelerators all the time that have nothing to do with what an accelerator is. It's a phrase now that a lot of people like to use, just like innovation, where you're not really sure what it means exactly. But truthfully, the Accelerator 1.0 is the Y Combinator of the world. Think of it as like a startup MBA, an MBA just for entrepreneurs that was designed to help you launch a company and to figure out what it's like to go from idea to a tangible business. And it kind of stopped there. And really the goal of it was to help you figure out product market fit and then maybe go raise a round of financing. And Y Combinator started this, in my opinion. And then you had sort of the next wave within that. Techstars is probably the best known name of that. They took this model and then said, hey, like there are partners that might be interested in paying to help entrepreneurs. And so what's consistent in those models is you get this education. It's very early stage, pre-seed, definitely pre-series A. And you get the education in exchange for equity. And sometimes you get cash. And the amount of cash depends. It can be 100,000, it can be 250. But you're giving up usually 6 to 10% equity at that earliest stage. And I think that really works for first-time founders that are really nascent and maybe don't have connections or haven't done this before. There's a tremendous amount of value to it. And I think it's a really beautiful, almost philanthropic type of endeavor out of the gate. And it still has a tremendous place, and Y Combinator's easily like the most famous and has tremendous success stories that are there. I think that's one point.
And they take, if I could just interject, so Y Combinator, I believe, is at 7% equity for that service, and Techstars, I believe, is typically at 6%. So that's we'll call that the high end. So how is 2.0 different? 2.0 Accelerator.
Yeah, so we kind of came into this and we said, all right, that's a chunk of the equity. What do you get in exchange for that? And I think for a pre-seed company or really early stage founders, that makes sense as a model. But a lot of founders have done this before or have subject matter expertise in the zone they're starting in. They've built someone else's companies and now are spinning out a niche. And so they don't need as much of the hand holding. How do you write a contract? How do you incorporate? How do you do those kinds of things? And they looked at it and said, wait a second, what am I giving up my equity for? I want to commercialize this business. I want to get deals. And some of them would go do this because they don't know the VC market. And so it's a way to get in and get introductions to other VCs. And, you can kind of use the brand equity of saying you went to YC. And by the way, if you get into YC, you should go. I think that has some brand name, just like if you got into a Harvard or something like that.
Yeah, I actually just completely by coincidence, I have the only Harvard sweatshirt I'm wearing. So this is a little embarrassing, but it's sort of
Yeah.
like that. If you get in, it's a bit of a shorthand. The brand is a shorthand for like I know what I'm doing. I'm kind of in the right group or the right place. So what do
Yeah.
you do that's different?
Yeah, so it's a badge of honor, and I believe that and agree with it. I think what we did is we came in and we said, wait a second, there's an opportunity here to rethink this and make it about there's a different way to fuel your venture. That's where our name came from, which is don't spend all your time figuring out how to elevator pitch your business. Like if you're a real founder, you know how to elevator pitch your business. What you need to be doing is going out and working with blue chip Fortune 500 companies, finding product market fit, proving that it works, and commercializing the business. So I think of our process as a more professional focus commercial accelerator. We've joked that we should call it like the commercialator or something awful like that. But really the idea, right, is like, hey, this is about the hardest thing if you're an entrepreneur. If you think of sort of the, crossing the chasm type innovation thing, is there's excitement and then you've got to scale the business. You got to get beyond your friends and family and go out there and talk to somebody that is a true buyer and get them to try you and then get them to double down and scale with you. And so that's where we're really focused, is like,
Mm-hmm.
we expect you to have some product market fit. We call the startups that we're interested in enterprise ready, meaning like they can handle a Comcast or a Dick's Sporting Goods as a customer and they're ready to go. It's time to get into the big leagues. And so our founders need less hand holding at that point and more acceleration.
So they're at a later stage.
Yeah, so it's still usually pre-series A. I would say that it's definitely past the idea stage, and it's more, if you think of it like idea to impact, like we're closer to the impact, but before they have a whole sales team running around to scale it. So we're usually, the first couple of big contracts. That's where we're looking to find them.
And so what's interesting about this to me is that you sort of go right to the customer. It's like the famous management consultant Peter Drucker said the aim of business is to have a customer.
Yeah.
If you don't have a customer, you don't have a business. So you go to the kind of the potential corporate clients who can leverage a startup's expertise or technology, and they become the first or one of the first customers. I guess that's the model, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what I think the advantages of that are pretty. I think they're obvious. Having a customer, having people who know what they're doing, working with you. What's hard about that? What are the disadvantages of that approach?
I think what's interesting is if you talk to any founder about how hard it is to get a deal
Yeah.
with one of those Fortune 500 companies, and they're notorious, right? It's slow. You get caught with a non-decision maker for 6 months. Then you get to the decision maker. Then you're in legal and procurement for another 12 months. You're in an 18-month cycle, and they might change their mind by the end of that because the person gets rotated to a different business group or priorities change. And as a founder, you just wasted 18 months, which is,
Mm-hmm.
the worst possible scenario. So what we've done is kind of reverse engineer this process by going to the big customer, the Fortune 500, and saying, what business challenges are you trying to solve? What are the important problems you're trying to solve that you can't solve internally or with your existing vendors, right? Like where's the white space you're trying to get to?
So
And is it important?
have they like figured that out in advance? Like, what are the problems we cannot solve that we need to go outside for? And beyond sort of like we're going to call McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group, have they really identified? Is that how it works in a big company?
Uh, Very interesting, Michael. It's half have figured it out and they know. The other half are trying to figure it out. So we have a consulting insights piece of our business. So I almost joke that we're like between YC and McKinsey. If you had to draw a map of what our business is, because oftentimes we come in and we say, "Hey, let's do a diagnostic. Let's really sit down and do some design thinking, and understand what are the growth areas, where adjacent markets you could go into, where are you having troubles, where there are efficiencies in your business. And, instead of being like, okay, now go do this internally, we're like, hey, you can start on third base. There are startups in all these areas that are dying to work with you. And there's real synergy here, because instead of spending, I always joke about R&D, right? If you think of R&D, you spend most of the time in R, researching, research, and then you get the blessing to go develop. And we're like, hey, just start right here on develop. Like, you've got the problem, but a startup's been working on this for 2 years. And so that's a little bit how we think about it, is really starting with those challenges. We can help the corporate figure out what they are. And then we search globally for the best startups to solve that
you do.
challenge.
You actually go out and look. You go out and find who's doing what.
Yeah, Michael, I mean, the best part is, like, I never wanted this to be academic. I didn't want this to be like, here's your blue ocean. Here's the white space you can go to. Good luck. Or put me on retainer for 3 years and I'll keep repeating back to you how to do it. Instead, we're like, hey, we'll go find them. We built out a network. It's over 700 VCs, angels, seed investors, university labs around the world. And we'll say, Fortune 500 is trying to solve for this. Sometimes we don't say who the Fortune 500 is. Do you have anything in your portfolio, anything you've seen that's interesting? And my team is off doing all the due diligence, looking for these companies. We then are amazingly good at vetting them down to this small subset of saying, hey, here are the 5 that really could solve this problem. This is why this one versus that one. This is what we believe. Now let's also run a pilot with them. And our team will stay involved and actually project manage that pilot.
Okay.
For then the scale up. So it's a full service type of scenario. And rather than it being an academic paper of here's what the future looks like, it's like, let's go find it and co-create it with you.
And you do not take equity, is that right?
No, we do not. So it's interesting. I have a lot of people ask me why. It seems like we're leaving money on the table. And there's certainly something to that, that we see a lot of really exciting companies very early. I felt that there would be a lack of bias, or there would be bias if I all of a sudden said, okay, here's the AI company that I think is really interesting. I would always be pushing that as the solution, right? Why wouldn't you be? And I think a lot of people in this space are often trying to push their portfolio on the corporates and get paid on both sides. And while that might seem like a conflict of interest, a lot of people are doing it. And I felt that it would be inauthentic to say that I could actually recommend one startup over another if I had a piece of either side. So we don't do that.
So you're the one person in this industry with integrity. It's very nice to meet you, Fred.
Yeah, I need a loan because of that. No, it's funny. We made the choice that we really feel that helping solve the corporate problem is something that there will be more problems to solve, and that's where we're going to spend our time. And there's certainly investment opportunities for the corporate too, where their CVC group, their venture group sees, hey, this worked with this business unit. It's still early. We can invest at this point. Yeah. So we advise a lot of people on their investment strategy, but we're not taking equity as part of the program.
Interesting. I would push back slightly in saying if you did, really, in my opinion, all you would have to do is disclose it. Say like, okay, here's 4 companies. We have an interest in this one. You should know that. But you're smarter than me, and I appreciate the purity of the intention, which I think probably is manifest in a lot of really good ways. Yeah. So give us a couple of examples of like give maybe one example of how this works. So if you can name names, that would be great. If not, that's okay too. But tell us, like, in practice, how does this work?
Yeah, I'll give you a good example that's public. As I mentioned, a lot of our Fortune 500 see this as competitive advantage. So it's very stealth and we can't talk about any of the good work we're doing. But some of our clients recognize the halo effect of innovation. And by being out there doing this, it's exciting to employees, to stakeholders, to investors, right? So Comcast, NBC Universal is one of our long-standing clients. We've been working with them for almost 6 years at this point. And we're doing we just announced our 3rd class in the past 12 months with them, that it was all AI-focused startups. And I'll give you one of them. The business challenge was around deep fakes. So
Oh
this
yeah.
idea that generative AI is moving so fast that I could create Michael, an avatar of Michael that looks and sounds just like you, and I could do something nefarious. And if you run NBC News, for instance, that's quite a problem. And
Yeah.
how do you decipher what's real and what's not? And how do you do it in real time? And how do you detect the deep fakes? And we found a company named Reality Defender uh,
Great
that
name.
has unbelievable name, unbelievable founders, amazing technology. They can decipher whether something is synthetic, that is, an image that has been altered in some way by technology, and alert you to it right away. And they've won all sorts of awards from government groups, all sorts of amazing accolades in the last, let's call it 6 to 12 months. But we put them into the program. It was Comcast Lift Labs is the name of the group. It was the Generative AI Accelerator. They got a commercial deal with Comcast as part of that. That has since scaled up, and actually Comcast Ventures has invested also in the company. So you kind of get this whole journey, but it started with this problem of, hey, the deep fakes are becoming real. It's becoming an issue we need to think about. How do we get in front of that? And so we looked across the world at all the different companies that could solve for that, and pinpointed Reality Defender is the one that we thought would work best with with Comcast NBC, and it's working very nicely for all involved.
So in this case, and I'm assuming in maybe all cases or most cases, your customer is the corporation, the
Yeah,
big corporation, right? Okay.
always.
So always. Um, that raises some really interesting possibilities. So the companies you're working with, like Reality Defender, they get paid to do a job, right? They're hired and paid, and they deliver. And it's in doing so, you've really taken a company like that out of the theoretical and into the real world, essentially, right? So it's a
Yeah.
bit of a leapfrog effect, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, if you think about it from, and I won't speak to them specifically, but directionally, all of a sudden now you can say, by the way, we've done this work with NBC. These are the results from that work. And then it's scaled to a further partnership. So what does that mean for the startup? Well, now it's easier to go sell in to insert any other type of
Anybody,
organization like that.
sure.
And now when you go to raise money, you're like, oh, by the way, one of our clients is, a Fortune 20 company, and we started here, but now our deal is this. And they see the value in it so much, they're now on our cap table also.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a tremendous. When I first started the company, I advised, it was a friend who told me about accelerators. I knew nothing about it. He was starting the startup, and I was like, look, there's a better way to fuel your venture. You need to go get deals. And he goes, but I got to raise money. And I'm like, no, then you're just on the hamster wheel. You're always going to be raising money. But
Yeah,
if you
this
can
is
get a blue chip client and show that it works and that they double down, now you're in control. You've got a real business that can scale with or without venture. And so now venture is going to value you at a more favorable rate.
and
So it
you've
kind of
got
shifts the power.
that lovely thing, a customer and revenue. So, how did take us through the journey of how you came to found this company, VentureFuel?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I had a startup when I was 25. I did all the things wrong I could have done. I had a lot of fun with it, and I learned a lot. And business development was the hardest part. Was how do I get customers? I did a lot of things really right that had nothing to do with revenue, and so that was a very big learning experience for
Mm-hmm.
me. I then from there went and I got into the advertising world. I found a really interesting company that was early stage. I helped scale it, ended up being the head of sales there. And I really love this idea of like, how do you solve problems for large organizations who are our clients, and how do we scale that, and how do we navigate through Nike was very different how we navigated through Adidas, which is very different than Microsoft, right? So it was a little bit of a game of learning these organizations, and I did that for 10 years, and I kind of thought, boy, this is this is really valuable to a lot of people. And
You
how
came
do
in
you,
as a consultant, essentially. You were sort of helping.
I was the head of sales for a rising ad tech company.
Okay.
Uh, and so I was in the trenches doing this thing.
Okay.
And
What was the name of
I hit, it was called Zoom Media, not the Zoom that we all talk about, but it was advertising. We basically figured out how to network treadmills in gyms to create a TV station.
Oh,
And so
yeah, you had a network. Yeah, you had a broadcast network.
yeah, so you had a broadcast network. And so we were out selling that to all the advertisers. But very interestingly, the advertisers started saying to me, what's next? Yeah, we've got this TV network, but how do we better connect with consumers? Is there a new technology that lets us connect the ad that's on the treadmill to their smartwatch or to their mobile device? Uh, and so I started saying, oh, that's really interesting. Why do you guys keep asking what's next? Don't you pay McKinsey or BCG or whoever $1 billion to tell you? And they said, yes, we do, but they never give us actionable companies that we can go work with. It's all theoretical. And so I had that kind of stuck in the back of my head. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It would be really cool if you could connect the dots for new technologies. And then I met this gentleman who was a founder. He went to my really tiny high school. He was the little brother of a friend of mine. I had dinner with him as a favor, and he spent the whole dinner saying he was in this accelerator. He couldn't get deals with Nike and all these folks. And I said, man, I can introduce you to those people. Like, here, let me send out an email to a few people I know. They took the meeting with him, and he was like, Fred, you don't understand what this did for me. I have this deal. Now I can go get other deals, and now I can raise money with a different lens. He's like, you have a business here. And I said, oh, geez, I actually know all the big companies that were saying what's next. So I started the company actually as it was almost like a rep firm, sales rep firm, where we were a chief revenue officer for startups. And I would help them get their first deals with all these big blue chips. And we did that for 5 years. I started the company 10 years ago, but the first 5 or 6 years of the company was us representing startups and navigating all these different big corporates to figure out how to get deals done. And then 2019, a big Fortune 500 said, have you ever thought about working for us? We do all these pilots and proof of concepts. We've run 44, and none of them have gone to a second program. So they're essentially 0 for 44. Would you take a stab at this? We're thinking about shutting down the program. I said, okay, let's do this. We scoped out the best way to do it. We ran 5 pilots together. All 5 of them scaled to a second program.
Wow.
And I was like, oh,
I 5 for 5.
5 for 5 after 0 for whatever it was, 40 plus.
44.
And so I said, you know what, this is our superpower. And so I actually retooled VentureFuel to work for the larger company and take what we had learned and help each of these large organizations learn how to do it better, faster, more efficiently, and have some tangible outcomes.
So let me ask this. It's sort of an oil and water question. You have on the one hand a corporation with a certain DNA, without doubt, right? And you have a startup which has a very different DNA. Maybe even you might say a foreign DNA compared to the corporation. So as a person who makes this marriage happen, how do you manage that? How do you manage the cultural differences? Or do you even try?
Yeah, we do try. We put aside the differences for a second. We focus on a North Star that they can both agree on. What is the corporate trying to achieve? Why does it matter? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Should we even try and achieve that? We get alignment on we value this thing. We will pay for this thing. And then we go find the startup that wants to deliver that thing. And we say, hey, can you guys work together? And we actually spend a lot of time. So when we vet a startup, we have a rubric of how we evaluate the startup. But one of the factors, we call it pairing. Does it pair well with the big organization? And that's around.
How do you tell that? How do you, what are the factors that make a good pair?
Yeah. So it's a little different for each corporate. So we understand the corporate's strategy, structure, how much capacity they have. Are they going to hold hands all the way through? Do they want the startup to figure it all out? So we do a little bit of navel gazing at the large organization, and then we match that with the startup. So is this a founder that gets it and can get it done, but also understands that a big company has procurement, has reasons that they move slower? Is there is there alignment there? So some of it is making sure that the startup is real, that they can handle what might get thrown at them, and that they're mature enough uh, to know how to navigate what will be a slower process than they wish. And similarly, on the big side, a big company side, are they set up to do this? Can we help them do it? So we take on a lot of the project management. We play translator. Someone described us as Duolingo
Yeah,
for startups and big companies, because as long as there's that North Star, we
right.
can usually help them date. Like, hey, we're all trying to row here. Let me show you how to row.
You're the translator. You're saying like what they really mean is this, right? And
Exactly.
what they're saying is this, and it might not be obvious. Um, so tell me, we've got a few minutes left, Fred. Tell me how this model of your company, VentureFuel, how it evolves, and sort of what the next couple of years look like. And is this are you going to just try to do more and more and more, or what's the nuance here?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different opportunities in the future. I think one is uh, this is like we're at the beginning stages of why this is interesting for big companies. They're being forced by investors to deliver more growth, to do it more efficiently, less headcount, more strategically, faster. All these things. There's a lot of pressure on from Wall Street, from investors on big companies to move fast. Uh, and similarly, there's a lot of pressure on startups for monetize quicker, prove out your business plan. So I think we're actually in this really special time and space where we actually know how to bring those two together for mutual beneficial growth. So I love our model. I love where we are. I love the opportunities that are there. I think there's certainly there's lots of levers. We've been doing things called co-development, where the startup and the big company are actually working together to create something net new, which is really cool. It's like a R&D 2.0. And then there's the sort of more venture capital side of this, which is, a lot of the CVCs, corporate venture capital groups, they want the insights uh, from what's happening in the startup ecosystem as much as they want the actual investment. And
Mm.
so how do we help the CVC groups do the insights better, make better choices on the investments? What about large companies that don't have a CVC group? Can we be helpful there? So I think there's a couple different lanes of future growth there. But my hope is that in 5 years, when you have me back, you're like, wow, you guys are the innovation resource for large organizations. We're that bridge into the startup emerging technology space. And that's what we're focusing all our time on.
Well, Fred, if I'm still breathing and I'm still podcasting, you can definitely come back and we'll tell the story of success. I want to remind our audience this is the Accelerator with Michael Conniff. We are available on all the major platforms. You can find us on Apple, Amazon, just about everything out there, about a dozen different podcast platforms, also on YouTube and Spotify with audio and video, and also, most importantly, on Substack. Get on our mailing list. Get a chance, rate us, like us, recommend us. That would be great. We would appreciate all that. And today, I want to thank our guest, Fred Schonenberg from VentureFuel. Fred, it's been great to have you. And I've left a minute here to talk about our beloved Knicks. You have behind you on the wall. I'll let you describe what you have behind you on the wall.
My wife got me this. I guess it's a triptych. That sounds like a very fancy art word for three posters. But they're the patent drawings for the first hoop, the basket, the backboard for basketball, and it sort of bridges my love of innovation and also basketball. We were talking at the beginning about the Knicks team is as exciting as any
Yeah.
since the Bill Bradley age and Clyde Frazier and all those guys. So my
Yeah.
4.5-year-old is freaking out every morning telling me about Brunson, and we're having a good time in New York.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, and it just occurred to me to ask, who has the patent on the basket?
You know what? I'll have to get back to you. I am not sure. I
Name
haven't.
James Naismith, because he used a peach basket.
He did use the peach basket, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I'll have to look and get back to you.
That's a lesson. It's like he had the idea, but he didn't get the patent, and so he's famous, but not his. He created no legacy. He created no family office, right?
There you go.
Well, listen, thanks, Fred. This has been great. A pleasure to have you. Would love to have you back. And we want to remind our audience and thank our audience for listening. And remember that we'll be back with another podcast before you know it.
Thanks.